So our next set is this recording? An Audioline 340 by the looks of it. Now this was very kindly donated and sent to me by a gentleman in December, or was it the end of November? And it belonged to his late father, so I really appreciate that. And he wanted me to have it so he could look at a YouTube video of it being got to its, we're going to do anything with that mic, to its former glory. So it's come with a universal bracket rather than the original one, and we won't go into that. There's a few screws in the bottom of the box there. So I'll tell you what, we'll put the mic and the universal bracket into the box because we're not going to use that mic. Is this the type that uses those batteries you can't get? No. I'll tell you what, we'll take that battery out. We'll try and take that battery out. I've got a piece of fag packet wedged in there because one of the case mouldings has broken. So that's kind of at the moment what was making it work. Not sure why I can't get the battery out, because it's stuck there with blue tack and the tabs eroded. Yeah, right. So as I say, we'll put that in back in the box. So if somebody likes to explain to me what echo mics are all about, because if they were any good, they'd be using them in space and military and police. Or is it just that I've come from a business radio background and just find the whole concept bizarre? But each to their own. Obviously that battery's not going to be any good. No, it's absolutely dead. Right, we'll put that in the battery thing. Right, so we've got a bit of a power connector there, and I'm sure Mr. Chippy can remake that, so that's appreciated. Oh, we'll get rid of the gaffer tape. So it's got some aftermarket side screws, which I'll also put in the box it came in. So it doesn't need me to say, oh, the exclusion needs. Hello, what was that lid off? Doesn't need me to say that needs some TLC and some gluing back on, so really it needs to come off carefully and then be cleaned and put back on. So first thing we're going to do is we're not going to power it up with those capacitors that we know need replacing. So I might as well take both the lids off, because what we don't want to do is to damage the phase lock loop chip, which is really irreplaceable. I was offered some, had to buy 100 from Brazil, and they worked out at £29 each. So that was a big investment, and I know I wouldn't even sell them for £29 each. So it was absolutely pointless going down that exercise. So somebody in Brazil's actually got some, but they're wanting far too much money for them. Had there been 16 quid and they sold me 10, we might have done it. But I don't think they're worth £29 because nobody's going to pay that. Let alone a markup, let alone a fee for fitting them. So, right, so that's taken the lid off that. So you've got 4 capacitors, which on this chassis, whether it's the Uniden, whether it's the Realistic, or whether it's the Audioline badged one, which uses this board, then the 2 470 microfarad capacitors and the 2 220 microfarad capacitors need changing. That one, that one, that one, and that one. One of the first things you're going to end up with is no display because of the phase lock loop chip. Oh, this is a problem now. It's had an illegal modification. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm so sorry. I don't know why people do this. And so somebody's added a piggyback phase lock loop chip there, which is illegal. So although it's a UK set of channels, you can't add CPT channels to it. That is against the law. And there's a very simple reason, apart from the fact it'll never work properly and it'll never be on frequency properly, and it will probably kill the rest of the set, is that the interference which was permitted under 2781 from the transmitter is greater than the interference permitted on the CPT set of channels. And this is why the UK set of channels was rejigged to produce CB2794, PR2794, so it was a little bit higher spec than the CPT. That paved the way for us to have 80 channel sets in this country. And somebody obviously did this kind of thing, probably still does, and charges a fee for it, and it's illegal, so it's got to come out. I'm really sorry that his dear late father's been hoodwinked like this, and you know, the danger here is it can have killed the radio, and if it kills that phase lock loop chip, as I say, it's effectively irreplaceable. So it's not going to be straightforward at all. It's going to be quite an involved job, and the first thing we've got to do is take that stupid chip out. So how have they done it? And you see, the other thing they do is they disable one of the switches to make the illegal modification be switchable. So I think in this case they've disabled high-low tone, so all that's got to be re-implemented. So that blue wire needs to go, and that blue wire needs to go. So what I thought was going to be a 40-minute job is probably now going to be a 2-session job. So we'll get rid of that, get rid of that. I don't expect that should be there either. I'll have to check with another set which hasn't been got at. Right. So we need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of that capacitor. So I think what they've done here is they've taken the phase lock loop chip out, and then they've soldered the piggyback one on and then put it back in. So that's something we're going to have to do, and we've risked the danger of damaging the phase lock loop chip, because you don't want to be soldering and unsoldering these things, even with the static precautions that I'm going to take. So I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so this is where we are with it. I've taken out the 4 capacitors, I've taken out the chip, I've cut the pins off this chip, because what I didn't want to do was to try and unsolder them individually. So I've then been able to unsolder them in a fraction of a second individually, rather than trying to pull the two apart, even with the solder sucker. So hopefully the chip isn't ruined. But there's a hopefully, isn't it? And when it gets the sad state that somebody actually scraped off the numbers off that, it's going in the bin anyway. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll test these capacitors we've taken out, and we'll see whether they were anywhere near where they should have been. So that's 470s, 530. If they're high, it's indicative of imminent failure. That's spot on. I'm not putting it back though. That's spot on. And that's spot on. So 1 out of the 4 was on its way. And this is a situation where, as if there was a customer certain you sent this back, the problem then is that it packs up in a week's time and they think you've done something wrong. So you change all 4 because they're about to play up. Right, I'll go and get some capacitors, and I'll open another setup and we'll see how it should be wired and what they've cut. Right, so there's our demonstration one. So let's see what's happened. So I was beginning to think that capacitor shouldn't be there. Well, it should be there. There's a link they'd cut, which I've put back. I already spotted that. Those 2 red wires should be there, but that blue wire shouldn't. So have they cut something around there? At this point I can't see anything that has been cut. And can I see anything missing or added? I've changed the 4 capacitors, put the chip back. I can't at this point see anything. So what have they done with this? Well, this white wire shouldn't be there, but they've usually cut the tracks on the front panel board. Now, if they've used a tone switch, it doesn't matter at this stage. They've cut the printed circuit board track to the lower bit. They've put this orange wire in. This orange wire can come off from there and go there. That will then cover what they've cut. There's probably another couple they've cut on the front. See if I can see them. Yeah, there's a part missing, and there's a track cut. Oh, we've got an extra red wire from somewhere. Let's get rid of that. think they've messed up the low power switch as well, you know. Yeah, that red wire shouldn't be there either. Yellow wire is missing. So that is oh no, hang on a minute folks. That red wire is where there should be a yellow wire. So that red wire, we'll just shorten that. That can go back. Then there's a cracked, broken removed track. That really wants a wire link across. We'll see if we can put a solder blob across it for now. Right. So at this stage, can I see? Yes, that's been shorted to there. That's got rid of that. These people should be sentenced to eternity putting these back right. So I don't think the tone control is going to work, but we'll come to that. So I wonder what that red wire is which they've added in. Well, I haven't got the foggiest, it's coming out. Good, another wire gone. It'll soon be wireless. So that capacitor came out, that can go. That's the lid to it. So we'll put ours on one side. And we'll power this up. I'll use the crocodile clips for now. It's an unknown set. We'll be powering it up with caution, so I'll put it on 9 volts and current limited to 250 milliamps. I could weigh a bit less when I've got all this rubbish out. And it's such a shame because these are such nice sets. And I just fear that this gentleman bought this, faffed about with, and he's never experienced it working properly. Probably hoodwinked into that silly microphone as well. Right, power supply on. 9 volts selected, we're drawing 120 milliamps, and I need a Uniden mic. So there we are, standard replacement mic for Uniden. The volume and squash controls are so noisy. They're going to need some cleaning, but we're going to be having that front off to some extent. So we're going to put the signal generator on, and then I'll set the VCO, and I'll get the realistic service manual out to remind me what to do. I don't think we've had a Uniden set for 3 months. So I'm going to key up, and we don't have transmit. It's got the red light on the front, we've got no transmit, but it may be that the phase lock loop chip. Actually, I can hear the signal generator coming through. So the fact the signal generator is coming through tells us that I've got all this wired back right, which is great news. So it's generating channel 20, change channel 1. Sounds a bit off frequency, but anyway, there we go. And as expected, the tone control switch does nothing. I'm just going to check low power just in case we have got transmit. So next thing I'm going to do is, are we transmitting at all? So let's put my monitor receiver on. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2, and we are transmitting. So that's good news. It's transmitting and receiving. We've done the phase lock loop section. So it's not transmitting for another reason. Perhaps some of this wiring isn't right, but it enables me to set up the VCO. So I will pause the video and I'll dig out the realistic service manual. Right, so we start with the radio on channel 40. We get our cheap little multimeter out. I can't remember whether this is a floating chassis or what. So I'll just put my negative prod to chassis. I'll put my positive prod to power. Oh, we're at 9 volts still, aren't we? That's probably why we've got no transmit. Yes, Mr. 21. We still don't have transmit. That was a good idea, but it wasn't the case. So, earth is the chassis. And we want test point 1. Test point 1 is the resistor just here, which is resistor 52, and it's the one which has got no insulation on it. It's a bare wire poking out of the wax. So we should have on channel 40 on transmit, we should have 3.5 volts, and we've got 4.9. So that doesn't help immediately, and of course that's all part of the silly modification. They'll have altered it to make the other one lock as well, and that's what the extra capacitor would be for as also. So it's going to be L17, which is the one with the wax in it. So we'll just melt the wax. My negatives come off. Wrong way. So 3.5 volts. There we go, 3.5 volts. So to do the VCO for receive, it's test point 3, and test point 3 is resistor 53. No, it's not, it's resistor 6. Which is there. But what you do, it says connect this to an oscilloscope and set for maximum on receive. So we will. And that's the door. Oh, that was UPS with something I bought off eBay. Just some electronic components, nothing for you to all get excited over. So we've got a jumping around trace there. So let's see whether we can get it a bit bigger. Or smaller. That's bigger. I'll come back to that when we do... Oh, I'm doing on channel 40 like a fool. You see I got interrupted. Let's see where we are now. It's about there. So we'll do that again when we've got the signal generator on and the synad meter. But at least it is receiving. If the... Yes, it's there. So we'll take that off. Just like that. If I remember rightly, the lineup is, I think that's the transmit on the, it is, yeah. So on Cybernet, the one that sticks out isn't, it's receive. So it's this is all going to need redoing because it's with it having been messed with. So here we go. We're on picture in picture, aren't we? Yes? No? I've been showing you nothing. There we go. Well, not that there's anything to show you yet. So, we're in transmit. It isn't transmitting. I can't get anywhere without it doing so. So we're going to have to see what has happened to transmit. And I suspect that this high-low power thing I've not restored properly. We'll turn the power off. I've missed something somewhere. So we've got the yellow wire is the red wire on this set. It's going to the correct place. So we should have nothing there. We should have a white wire there, which we have. And we should have an orange wire at the front, which we have. And that orange wire should go there, which it does. So I suspect we've got nothing actually missing on the wiring. We've got something missing like a deliberately broken track on the front panel. I mean, I can see, you know, there's a component missing from the, I think there's a capacitor missing from that high-low tone switch. But I suspect that they've linked a track out. So I'll pause the video. Right, so I've put the front and the scoosh and the knobs in the dishwasher. They're pretty filthy. I ought to really have taken those silver knobs off as well. Whilst we've got this board out, this was the object of the exercise, the capacitor from there is missing. So if we look in the service manual, hopefully we'll find out what capacitor 551 is supposed to be. If it has a tone control, of course, on the realistic version. My luck will be it doesn't. No, It has PA on that version. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It never works out, doesn't it? Well, I've got a circuit diagram on the computer for the actual Audioline 340, so I'll have a look at that and we'll get a part. That doesn't get to as to the fact that we don't have... I'll make sure this power's off. We still don't have anything on transmit. Doing this enables me to get behind this switch properly and just see whether there's something I've missed. I can't actually see there is anything I've missed. So we've probably got a link on the main board that provides power to the driver transistor. I suspect that's what's happened. It's just a matter of just looking as to what they've removed. It's always so time consuming doing these when this has happened, and so frustrating when there's such nice sets. I'll have another look behind the scenes. Okay, so next day I'll put some more time into this whilst the front was in the dishwasher yesterday, and I think I've got to the bottom why we've got no transmit. I've done the front panel wiring, we've checked all the voltages, and then I've come across this. So I'll just try and zoom in on it. And turn the power off. So on this track, I've just scraped away because there's a really neat cut. So we're just going to remake that without studying where that is on the circuit. It's probably the lock detector or the transmit inhibit pin or something like that, to be an actual link button, not just a solder blob. Right, switch the radio back on and let's see if we've got transmit. Well, the answer is no. Let's get the monitor receiver back. So it's still transmitting into the monitor receiver. Let's see whether we're getting anything. Just put the camera back to its normal position. It's always the trouble, you just don't know what they've done. We'll get the RF voltmeter out. Oh, we've got transmit there. So I didn't have that before coming out of IC301. So phase lock loop per output goes into transistor IC3, which is the TA7310. So I now have an output. So that is an improvement. Of course, the PA could be knackered, couldn't it? So it's maybe possible to tune it up. Let's have a look at that. So we have gained that ground. I'll just see whether we get anything if I compete over the test set going through its times tables. I'm going to just tune this up on current. I don't know which is high and which is low power either. Well, that's drawing more current if the switch is in that position. I can't remember whether that one's transmit or receive, and I'm not going to. It is transmit. So we've now got that for a peak on the ammeter. There we go. We've got transmit. Wow. Oh, I wonder when this last worked. It's nice that it doesn't have to have the expense of any driver or output transistors. So, let's see where we are. I'll turn the monitor receiver off now. So that is 3.2 watts. So peak that once again. It's actually just done 4.1 there. So I'll just go through these backwards. 4.5. That was spot on. So just touch that once again. This needs to be peak and that one needs to be dropped. That was peak. So this will be clockwise, it to be tuned in for slightly less power. There we go, spot on the 4 watts. So now we've, let's hope the low power switch works. I'll just put that in camera a bit better. Hopefully that's brought us to low power. It's brought us to no power. Oh, I pressed the tone one, haven't I? So is that a Duff preset or is there a wiring problem? No. 400 milliwatts. And back to the other power level. It's in for 4 watts. 4 watts. 0.4. Excellent. Let's see where the deviation is. One. Oh, it's 3.5. You wouldn't expect that to be right, would you? It goes with the territory. I do feel sorry for this chap's father. I really think he was hoodwinked over this. I don't think for 1 minute he was the person who instigated all this to happen. What do I want? Mr. Chippy would say good kicking. I want the little oscillator, that's it. You know what? They've gone to trouble changing that preset. I'm gonna have to change that preset. I think they've dragged it out of an old television set or something. So you can't make it up, I tell you. Right, so on this radio it's 1K. I've just looked it up in the realistic service manual. We're using the Rapid Electronic 670406, which is a 1K skeleton preset, which is what these are. They're not the enclosed type. So these actually fit. And I can't think of anyone else who's selling them. Gone are the days though when they were cheap. So hopefully, I can't even see a value on them when I've taken out. Right, let's see if we can set up the deviation now. Back on. Helps if you plug the mic back in. Wallow. Wallow. That would have been really funny if it had been spot on just out of the packet. Wow, spot on that. I got that right. So it's averaging 2.2 with an absolute peak of 2.5 kilohertz. So I'm tempted to put the front on before going any further. We can't put it on frequency even if it's off because it's a fixed crystal on these. It's not variable. 27790. Ooh, no, it's not good enough. It's 063. We're going to have to pull that up with a. We're going to have to replace the crystal, aren't we? And the missing capacitor isn't showing on my wrong circuit. The missing capacitor for the tone switch goes there, and it's 10 nanofarads Mylar. So I just measured it off the other scrap chassis, not a scrap chassis, the other set which we're going to have to fix at one time. So just across there, I can just see through the gap that it's a green Mylar one. So I've measured it with the capacitor meter, and it's 10 nanofarads. So we'll do that. So that's frustrating. I don't expect they've fiddled with that. I'll just take the power back off. I think it's probably just old age and poverty. Now I can't see any capacitors having been changed. I just think time's taking its toll on that crystal, but it's now too low to be acceptable. In fact, it's on the verge of no longer being legal. I think the easiest way to get that out what I'm hoping to do is to find a scrap chassis. But I am struggling with crystals, and every time I try and order them from China, I'm doing the wrong one, aren't I? Every time I try and order them from China, they don't work properly, which is sad. I do have a crystal tester, which ironically was a Chinese kit, so it's the original crystal. I'll have to see if we've got anything like see what we've got in the new ones before. Panicking. These are Hooray brand, and they're anything but Hooray. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put it this way on. We'll power it up. We'll hold a crystal across the terminals and see whether we've got anything which is anywhere near. I'll put the frequency counter on the inset picture and plug the mic back in. I said yesterday when I was looking at the receiver, I said it sounded off frequency. Well, it was. Right, it's power back on. So what the trick here is to hold transmit and then put a crystal across, then it'll suddenly start operating. 7.9. That's worse. Dreadful. They're all load of rubbish, those. But I do keep them because you never know, there might be one which needs a lower one which actually works. Now, sometimes we've got recovered ones. I think we've got an AM set we can take something out of. I was sent an AM set by one of the customers for spares. I'll come back to it. I think it's tea time. Right, so this AM set, which is an FCC American set, so it's illegal in this country, was passed on to me, and we've been able to recover the crystal from that, and there'll be other things which can be recovered. So they're not a total waste of time. So it's another Maxon made set. So the crystal, let's have a look. Put this one back on. No, it's worse than the. Of course, the set's probably a year older as well. It's probably about 1980. Right, well, we're struggling. We are struggling. What's this? Oh, it's another hooray crystal. Wow, that's even worse. Pause the video, see what I can find. Right, I found one. It's one we'd put on one side. 10.24. It's got a bit of insulation on it, which is always nice. Don't know what that came out of, but anyway, I put it on one side when something got it removed from it. So put that one in. It's just slightly high, which is ideal. But when you've got no adjustment on a set like which these are, I know we could make an adjustment, but I don't want to modify radios, as you well know. You know, if this was getting us off a desert island, and the only thing we could do was to put one of those other crystals in, you know, we could start messing about with capacitors. But we don't want to do that. And you've got to be quick soldering crystals, very easily destroyed. Just solder those back up, which I inadvertently unsoldered. Good. That's another thing overcome. I'll go and get the case parts for this. Right, we'll come back to this. So, see where we are with the frequency now it's put together. Yeah, that's slightly high, that's fine. How many watts are we doing? 4 watts. How many watts are we doing on low power? 0.4. And the tone control, you can hear the treble and normal, treble, normal. I put a 10 nanofarad capacitor in, which had been removed, so that's that fixed. So let's move on to the receive. So with the signal generator on 2779125 when we get there. Now these sets aren't as sensitive as Cybernet sets, so don't expect that. But at the moment it's not very good at all. It is doing 3 microvolts for 12 dB sinus. So we go on to the synad meter. You see I've got that on 10 dB. Let's put a bit more volume on so we can prove it. So 2.9 microvolts. Oh, it's all over the place. Why is that? Because the aerial socket's not plugged in right? Let's try again. So, giving you a proper reading, it's 1.4 microvolts for 12 decibel synad, which we should get better than that. So the first thing we'll do is put an S9 equivalent signal on of 100 microvolts. We'll have a look at the oscilloscope and we'll get that peaked. I think it's that one without looking at the manual. It is. Slightly out, but not stupidly out. So over to the synad meter. I haven't glued the escutcheon on yet. I've straightened it out as best I can. I know you can get replacements, there's people making replacements on eBay, but they're actually chrome look plastic, so I think we're better off with the original, to be honest. Right, here goes. So I want about 4 dB. We'll go through the front end. So we'll drop the signal generator off because that's an improvement. That's an improvement. That's an improvement. Do that again. And we'll go through these IFs, put a bit more signal on. That was already spot on. That was a bit out. So we're now getting just under 1 microvolt for 12 dB saddened, which is about where you expect to be with the Uniden base set. Right, let's go back to transmit, because one of the things we hadn't done was to set the power meter. Are we on 400 milliwatts? Yeah. So it's banging across. We need to adjust that. Centre of the red zone on these sets. Back to receive. So we'll do the meter, S9, 100 microvolts on it, and the signal meter is there. I'll tell you what, it's already bang on where it should be. We've done the deviation with the new preset there that I fitted. We've done the low power with the preset there, which just leaves us to check squelch out. So we'll just drop the signal a bit. I've put 3 microvolts on. We're just going to turn the squelch to full, like that. I'll put the attenuator on the inset picture, and we'll advance the signal generator from 3 microvolts to 10 to 30 to 100. Now I want the squelch to open at that. It opens at about 100 millivolts, which is ridiculous. So squelch. There we are. So with a 100 microvolt signal on the signal generator, I'll advance this and hope that we can open the squelch, but we can't. So I'll have to put the signal up a bit higher. I don't know which is on the preset, which way and which is the other. So that is best. So we can't get the squelch quite where I want it, and it is 1 millivolt. Let's get an accurate reading. It's not 1 millivolt. It is 450 microvolts. So it's a bit strong, but it does open. So now we've set the signal generator so it's at 0.3 of a microvolt, and I've put it to standby. I'm going to turn the squelch down on the radio, set threshold, switch the signal generator back on. Squelch is coming in at 2.5 microvolts and leaving us at 2. Let me just try that again because it's a bit stronger than I would like. Drop the squelch down, set threshold a bit more carefully. Not that you want to be doing that in a car. Switch it back on. No, it's 2.5 microvolts to come in. Not the most squentative, most sensitive squelch in the world. Sure, that'll work all right around Scratchy Corner, and it's certainly better than some of the team radios we've seen with 8 microvolt squelch sensitivity. So, there we are. We're actually done after all that. So, just to recap, the radio had been illegally 80 channeled, and that's usually the end of the set, because it usually kills the phase lock loop, which is effectively irreplaceable. So we have to then modify the radio back to standard, but you never know what they've done. And I'd missed that link, which stopped us getting an output from the end of that IC. So got all that back working. They found the tone control capacitor missing, put that back in, and replaced the deviation preset and set that up properly. So, oh yes, and of course the crystal. So what it's the time this is involved would be our service level 3, which will then be plus parts. So, you know, it's one of those sets which you think, is it actually worth it? Well, it is in this case, because there's a story to it, and it belongs to somebody's late father, and that's important to them. Okay, it's time to put the speaker lid back on. So we'll start the big box of radio repairs probably tomorrow. About 10 to do. So anything that comes in the meantime will jolly well have to wait. Just check that works. We'll unplug the extension speaker. No, it doesn't work, does it? I'm wondering if the socket's dirty and its internal switch is playing up. Just put that in and out a few times. Right. So that's on the external speaker. Yeah, that's what it was. Oh, I'm so glad it wasn't the speaker. Just want that bit of tape to be on the outside of the chassis so I can remove it easily. Right, we'll get some screws in this. So whilst I put the last 2 screws in, we'll turn the signal generator off and we'll swap it to the aerial. Right, we're on the aerial. One on a Roger. Good. And I'm pleased to have got the tone control back in operation. So there we have it. The kindly donated ex-bereavement, Audioline 340, back to the world of working properly. And I'm just so sorry that the gentleman's late father had ended up with a kind of with the wool pull over his eyes and having bought a set that was actually illegal and working dreadfully. Thanks for watching.